Buying a house is supposed to be a dream come true, a fresh start, a place to build your life. But sometimes you don't pick the house picks you. And some houses don't like to be abandoned. This story comes from a couple who thought they had found the perfect home, a beautiful, fully furnished house in a quiet suburb, sold under mysterious circumstances. The previous owners left everything behind: furniture, clothes, even their child's toys scattered on the floor like they had just walked away and never looked back. What they didn't know was that the house had never truly been empty, and soon they would discover why the last family fled in the middle of the night and never came back. Ethan and Rachel had spent months looking for a house. Nothing felt right, either too expensive, too small, or just not the one, until they found this house. It was perfect. A charming two-story home in a quiet neighborhood with a wraparound porch and a massive backyard. The price? Almost too good to be true. The real estate agent, a woman named Karen, seemed a little too eager to close the deal, rushing them through the paperwork like she couldn't wait to be done with it. The first red flag: the previous owners had left everything behind. Not just furniture. Everything. Dishes still in the sink, clothes in the closets, a child's bedroom untouched, small shoes lined up neatly by the bed, a doll lying face down on the floor. Maybe they moved in a hurry, Rachel suggested. But Ethan had a bad feeling. The air inside felt thick, heavy, as if the house was still occupied, but by something unseen. Their first night in the house, they left most of the unpacking for later. The exhaustion of moving settled in, and they collapsed into bed. Then at 3:12 a.m., Rachel woke up. She wasn't sure why at first. The house was silent. But then she heard it. Whispering. It was faint, like a voice traveling through the walls. She nudged Ethan awake. "Do you hear that?" He groggily listened, but by then the whispering had stopped. "Probably just the pipes," he mumbled, but Rachel wasn't so sure. The next night, Ethan was working late, leaving Rachel alone. As she was getting ready for bed, she passed by the spare bedroom. The child's room left untouched. She froze. The doll that had been lying face down, it was now sitting upright, facing the door. Her heart pounded. Maybe Ethan moved it? Trying to shake off the unease, she went to bed. But as she lay in the dark, she heard it again. Whispers. Closer this time. And then a sound outside their bedroom door. A slow, dragging shuffle, like someone walking barefoot on the wooden floors. She held her breath. The doorknob rattled slightly, then stopped. Rachel was too terrified to move. Then a single knock. Silence. By the third night, Ethan finally admitted that something wasn't right. So he installed security cameras inside the house. They went to bed feeling a little safer, knowing they'd have footage if anything weird happened. The next morning, Ethan checked the footage. What he saw made his blood run cold. At 3:12 a.m., their bedroom door slowly creaked open on its own. A shadowy figure, just barely visible in the dim light, stepped inside. It didn't walk. It glided. It stopped at the foot of their bed, staring at them, standing there for over 5 minutes. Then it turned and disappeared into the hallway. Ethan's hands shook as he paused the video. Rachel stared at the screen, whispering, "That wasn't us." Determined to find answers, Ethan started inspecting the house more closely. That's when he found it. Behind an old bookshelf in the basement, he noticed scuff marks on the floor. Like the shelf had been moved before, he pushed it aside and found a door. A locked, hidden door. His stomach churned. He grabbed a crowbar, pried it open, and stepped inside. The room was small, cramped, and filled with old, rotting mattresses. Chains bolted to the walls, faded scratch marks on the wooden floor. Rachel gasped, backing away. "What the hell is this?" Then they saw it. A message scrawled in what looked like old, dried blood. They never left. Suddenly, a noise came from upstairs. Heavy, running footsteps. Like someone or something was still inside the house. That night, they planned to leave. They packed their bags, grabbed their keys, and then the lights went out. The house plunged into darkness. Then, footsteps. Not from above, from inside the room. Rachel let out a choked scream. Ethan reached for the door, but it slammed shut on its own. Then, from the shadows, a voice. Low, guttural, whispering. "You shouldn't have stayed." Rachel clutched Ethan's arm. The air grew ice cold. Then a sharp, violent breath right behind them. Ethan turned. A face. half decayed, hollow eyes, too close. They ran out of the room, up the stairs, through the front door, never looking back. They left everything behind, just like the owners before them. A week later, the police investigated the house. But here's the thing, the security footage, it was gone, wiped clean. The hidden room sealed shut again, like it had never been found, and the previous owners, they were never heard from again. The house remains on the market to this day, fully furnished, still waiting for its next victims. Sometimes a house isn't just a house. Some places remember, some places refuse to let go, and some houses are never truly empty. There are some places that hold on to things, memories, energy, things that refuse to leave. And if you're unlucky enough to be there at the wrong time, they let you know, violently. This happened to me when I was 18, and I still think about it every night. I hadn't been back in years. The small town where my aunt and uncle lived was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where Sunday church wasn't just a service, it was a social event. And apparently, so was Wednesday night church, which was where my entire family was going when we arrived at their home. I was exhausted from the long drive and opted to stay behind. I figured I'd get some rest before our early morning trip to California the next day. I didn't realize that would be the worst decision of my life. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, I was waking up to something standing in the doorway. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but no, there it was, a tall, human-sized shadow standing completely still. It was darker than the dark, almost like it was absorbing all the light around it, and even though it didn't move, I felt it watching me. The air was thick, pressing against my chest like a weight. My body refused to move. I couldn't breathe. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone, like it had never been there at all. But I knew what I saw. Shaken, I forced myself out of bed and into the living room. The sun was setting, casting a dim glow over the fields outside. The house felt wrong, too quiet, too still. But then the noises started. A loud, deliberate stomp, 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 echoing from the back of the house, then another noise, something falling over, then another. A chair scraping across the floor in a room I wasn't in. I wasn't alone. I didn't have my phone. I didn't even have a flashlight. My only options were to stay in a house that was clearly waking up or make a run for the front door. I took a deep breath and sprinted. The second my feet hit the hallway, the stomping raced toward me. Heavy, angry footsteps coming from the dark. I didn't dare look back. I reached the door, yanked it open, and threw myself outside, slamming it shut behind me. Something slammed into the door so hard that the entire frame shook, but I was out. I was safe, or so I thought. The sun had disappeared, and the only light came from the dim porch bulb. I stood in the driveway, shaking, heart pounding. The house behind me was quiet, but I could hear it. Things still moving inside, slow, deliberate steps. Then I saw it. Through the large bay window, a shadow, standing there, watching me. I refused to look again. I sat on a stump near the driveway and waited. Minutes felt like hours. The air was thick with something I couldn't explain, like the house was waiting for me to come back. It wasn't until nearly 10 p.m. that my family finally returned. My grandma, my two aunts, and my uncle pulled up, laughing and chatting as if nothing was wrong. The second they got out of the car, I ran to them, my words spilling out in a panic as I tried to explain everything. They just nodded. My uncle sighed, shaking his head. "Oh, that just happens here." That's when I realized they knew, they had always known, and they still left me alone in that house. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even go back into the room where I'd seen the thing standing in the doorway. I stayed on the couch, listening. The house never stopped moving. When morning finally came, we packed up and left. I never went back. Not once. But sometimes, I still dream about it. And in those dreams, I never make it out in time. There's a reason some rooms are hidden. Some doors should never be opened. I learned that the hard way. I moved into the house on a chilly October afternoon. It was a rundown Victorian, the kind of place with creaky floors and peeling wallpaper. The real estate agent called it a fixer-upper with charm. What he didn't mention was how unnervingly quiet the house felt, like it had been waiting for someone to return. I didn't mind the isolation. In fact, I welcomed it. I had just gotten out of a long, messy relationship, and fixing up this place was supposed to be my fresh start. The house was old, but solid. Original woodwork, a grand staircase, and a basement that, as far as I could tell, hadn't been touched in decades. I planned to make it livable first, replace the busted pipes, reinforce the sagging beams. But something about that basement kept pulling my attention. It wasn't just the damp smell or the way the air felt thick down there. It was something else, something off. The basement was cluttered with old furniture covered in sheets, rusted tools, and crates filled with God knows what. I spent the first couple of nights clearing it out. That's when I noticed it. A wall that didn't belong. The basement was supposed to be square, but one corner jutted out, forming an awkward L shape. And the brick on that section didn't match the rest. It looked newer, hastily done. I knocked on it. Hollow. I ran my hands over the surface, feeling for seams. Then, in the dim basement light, I saw it. A thin crack running vertically along the edge, barely visible beneath the dust. Someone had sealed off a section of the basement. My heart pounded as I grabbed a crowbar. It took more effort than I expected, but after a few hard swings, the bricks crumbled. Dust filled the air, making me cough. When it cleared, I saw a narrow passage leading into a hidden room. And at the far end of that room, set into the stone foundation, was a small iron door. It was no ordinary door. It was old, centuries old. The iron was rusted, the hinges blackened with age. A heavy, rusted lock hung from a thick metal latch. Someone really didn't want it to open. I ran my fingers over the surface, and a chill shot through me. The metal was ice cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer. Why would someone go through the trouble of sealing off a room just to hide a door? I should have left it alone. But I didn't. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that door. I could feel it down there beneath me, just sitting in the dark. Around 3 a.m., I heard it, a deep, rhythmic thudding coming from the basement. Boom, boom, boom. I bolted upright in bed, my heart hammering. It wasn't the house settling. It wasn't pipes. It was deliberate, measured. Something was knocking from the other side of that iron door. I grabbed the flashlight and forced myself downstairs. My breath came out in shaky clouds as I stepped onto the basement floor. The air was freezing. My footsteps echoed. I turned the corner. The iron door was open, just an inch. The lock lay on the ground, snapped clean in half, and the dirt floor in front of it was disturbed, as if something had crawled out. I ran. I didn't even look inside. I locked the basement door behind me, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat on my bed with my back against the wall, gripping a kitchen knife. I told myself I was imagining things, that the lock had just broken on its own. Then I heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving up the basement stairs, step by step. I held my breath as the basement door rattled. The handle twisted, but the chair held. The footsteps stopped. Then, after what felt like an eternity, they went back down. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I did what any sane person would do. I bought cameras, 3 of them. One for the hallway outside the basement, one inside the basement itself, and the last one facing the iron door. I set everything up and left the house for the day. I needed distance. That night, I locked myself in my room and pulled up the camera feed on my laptop. For hours, nothing happened, just darkness and stillness. Then, at 3:12 a.m., the feed glitched. For a split second, the screen pixelated. Then it returned to normal, and the iron door was open. Not just a crack this time, wide open. Something moved in the darkness. A figure. It was crawling. Its limbs were long, wrong, too many joints bending in ways they shouldn't. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched too tightly over bones that jutted out like knives. It dragged itself forward, slow and deliberate, then stopped. It lifted its head and stared directly into the camera, its mouth stretched open, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Its eyes, God, its eyes. They weren't human. They were black, empty pits. And then the feed cut to static. I didn't pack. I didn't even turn off the cameras. I grabbed my keys and ran. I didn't care about the house anymore. But as I reached the front door, I hesitated. Something was behind me. I felt it. The air turned heavy, pressing against my skin like a lead blanket. My ears rang, my stomach twisted in knots. I turned my head, and there it was, standing at the top of the basement stairs, watching me, its head tilted as if it was curious. Then, in a voice that sounded like shattered glass scraping over stone, it spoke. "You, let me out." The lights flickered, the room tilted, a shrill ringing filled my ears. My vision tunneled, I don't remember leaving the house. The next thing I knew, I was in my car, speeding down the highway, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I never went back. I put the house up for sale the next day. I didn't care about the money, I just wanted it gone. But before I could finalize the listing, I got an email from my security system. The cameras had detected movement. I forced myself to look. The feed was dark, but something was there, crouched in the basement, waiting. And then, right before the footage cut out, it grinned. The house sold within a week. Some couple from out of state. I never warned them. I told myself they wouldn't believe me. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder, have they heard the knocking yet?